Transatlantic Connection Show, bringing you artisan music and musicians, the vagabonds and adventurers, building with the raw ingredients of folk music from both sides of the Atlantic. I am Chris the Bish Lydon, and this week, our vagabond is Ted Russell Kamp, an American singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist producer, working in the worlds of country and southern rock. Ted shares his song Hold On with us. On the scene this week, we chat to Ian Smith, a musician, psychologist, agent, promoter, with some great insight into the future of the music industry, and join our house band as we share our new single, Western Requiem. This is the Transatlantic Connection Show. First up, our very own Kev Moore in conversation with Ted Russell Kamp. This interview was recorded back in early November 2020. Ted is an LA-based singer-songwriter, producer, Grammy-award-winning bass player, and in the before times would regularly tour over in Europe, occasionally doing recordings over here and video shoots as well. So Kev starts his chat with our vagabond by asking about those European experiences. Do those European influences seep into your own American music?
I do have to say, and I think a lot of American musicians and singer-songwriters can talk, and I can talk specifically about how much British music has meant, whether it's the Beatles and the Stones or even Oasis and modern stuff, where the British take on rock and roll from skiffle through kind of the psychedelic era, like how much American blues was appreciated by those guys.
Oh yeah.
And it also, as you know, as a music fan, lifelong music fan like you are, like it's amazing to me how underappreciated that was in America until the British ears took it and kind of I don't want to say reclaimed it, but they took it and they made it their own. And then all these Americans are thinking, oh my God, Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf. And in terms of the Beatles, I'm particularly a big fan of those last few records. And like we're doing things like Come Together and Get Back. It's like that really, like they kind of said, okay, let's strip away the artifice and all of the psychedelic stuff and the orchestral additions.
Well, as a bass player, Come Together, we're going to love that one, aren't we?
And it really just was this really incredible take on blues rock in a way. So that's been huge. Nick Drake is another British artist, very different than the Beatles, but that really just intense and personal, lonely singer-songwriter. Richard Thompson, there's a lot of it. One of the things I can also say about going to Europe in general is, you know, I'm not necessarily a country musician, but country is a part of what I do, and roots music and combining all these classic American sounds, especially also living in Los Angeles, as I'm in a minority. Most of the music people in LA are trying to make music as modern and saleable as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the great things about living in LA is that they kind of leave us roots guys alone. We can kind of do what we want and use our own compass for what we want our music to be like. That's been really great. But then again, you have this other thing where it's like, okay, I'm a minority, I'm respected in my scene, and I can go to Austin or Nashville or Chicago and do great shows and have friends there. And I know that us musicians, like we're all over and we can find each other, and we will find each other, and we will find an audience. But one of the great things when I started going to Europe is what I do is really particularly American. One of my first big tours over there, I had a bunch of gigs actually in Spain. And one of the guys says, what you do is so exotic. And he was driving me, like we were driving from the hotel to the gig, and he said that. And I'm thinking, wow, this is somewhat old hat, and I'm playing in bars most of the time, while, having to argue with the bartender about turning the TV off during our set. And I was like, wow. And just him saying that and then being able to play, I was like, well, okay, there is something special that I'm doing. And I can keep kind of honing my craft and getting into it. I don't have to feel embarrassed about the impulses. And, when some snarky guy says, yeah, this album's pretty good, it sounds a little too much like Jackson Browne. Sounds like this is really old, boring music. I'm like, okay, well, that's this guy's take. I'm taking these influences that I love and saying what I can to the best of my ability.
That's all you can do. I mean, if you're true to your own creative soul, What more can you do? And then it's subjective for other people, yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed this one time when I was touring Scandinavia many years ago. Some of the Eastern European bands sort of raving about how do you sound like that together? And there was something about a British band sound,
Yes.
the thing that you had together, that kind of freaked these guys out. And we just thought, well, we're just a band, you know, and nothing spectacular at the time. But they said, no, but there's something about how you play together. And we don't have that. Why don't we have that? You know, and I'm like,
and as you go from country to country, and then speaking about, say, if that comment came in Germany, you think about music like Can, and you think about a lot of the Eastern European music, or Eastern European rock, and then of course techno and dance music. It's very tight and rigid.
Yes,
which is kind of in line with the German classic sense of precision. And then you get to the pub rock, or the greasy sounds that you get that came from the British who played blues and got into their own thing, and the swampiness of feel that you might get,
that space in between,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool special thing. And it's funny, like I wouldn't be surprised if you'd have experiences like this, but sometimes I'll go to Europe and I'll have friends, and I put a band together of all Finnish guys or all Swedish guys or all Dutch guys, and then we'll do a bunch of shows together. And it's like I'm reminded how much I like to sway and groove and vamp. And all right, guys, I know that's how the record is, but if it's feeling good and we want to keep the guitar soloing longer, we will. If the groove is not settling in, then we're just going to vamp on one chord for a little while until it starts feeling great. I'll be very clear. You'll see me saunter on up to the mic and very clearly come in. I like to wing it. I like to improvise. And some musicians even in America are not as comfortable with that.
I mean, I think live music, it's a breathing thing, and
very much so.
I love that, where you sort of say, take another solo because this is really cooking,
The song is supposed to end now, but let's keep it going.
Yeah, because I'm having a good time.
Yeah, totally. And that joy translates for the audience too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When you first went to LA, you sort of started in the session scene, didn't you? Was it hard to get into that?
I'll say yes, but also the reason to move to a place like LA is there are so many musicians, and it's not just that there's a scene. There are like hundreds of adjacent scenes.
Yes.
So at first you find your Irish pubs and you find your local gigs, and I would go and sit in at blues jams. It was a common thing in both Seattle, where I played before, and then in LA. And it's a way to just kind of show up and play some songs and meet musicians for the first time when you get to town. You start definitely by doing the less glamorous sessions, and they're in someone's home studio, or there's a great part of town that's north of Hollywood, over the Hollywood Hills, and it's called the Valley. And then but then the nature of it is you show up, you play well, you're nice, you care, and then you start getting better work as the years go on.
Exactly,
And it was a pretty great era, because economically, America and kind of Western civilization was doing well. And so there were a lot of individual artists kind of like getting their act going. So for all of these artists, there were this group of I don't know, a couple 500 sidemen who could just be hired by anyone, and they learn you learn the set, you show up, you get into the music, and that was a pretty great phase for me, because I didn't necessarily had an idea for what I wanted to do as an artist in terms of writing my own songs, but I loved rock and roll and blues and country, and it was just this great education where all these different people were calling me to play, and then I could learn their music and kind of pick their brain a little bit.
Cool. That's the other side of it. You're not just getting work; you're getting the education of the whole range of styles and what have you. So was it through that scene that you got to meet Shooter Jennings and became part of his band, or?
Yes. In fact, in LA, like I said, there was not a lot of this kind of country meets rock and roll.
No, it's quite rare on the coast there, isn't it? Really?
But there was a good little scene of maybe 10 or 20 bands, and I was already playing bass in half of them, and beginning I had one band that I sang with that was kind of in that scene also. And then when Shooter was putting the band together, that evolved into his main band, Shooter and the 357s. Two different people recommended, like he had another bass player that was working in the band, and their interest was waning. And so he started asking his friends, and two different people recommended me. So he said, "Oh, this guy Ted's got to be cool." Yeah. And it was good because I loved. I had a very melodic approach, and so Zeppelin and John Paul Jones, and the Beatles and Paul McCartney. Carl Radle is a pretty incredible bass player who played with Leon Russell a lot and played with Freddie King. He was the bass player in Derek and the Dominoes. He had another very unique and very Tulsa take, because he was from Tulsa and part of the Tulsa sound, take on that melodic bass playing. And it all kind of stemmed from Jamie Jamerson and Motown anyway. But so I was getting known for kind of what I did. Yeah. And these two friends said, yeah, Ted totally gets country and the Waylon and the Willie and the outlaw sound, and he totally loves this classic 70s rock and roll. He's like, this is totally the guy for you. He's immediately gonna get it. And that's what happened. So I showed up at a rehearsal, and I was just meeting Shooter for the first time. No, I had seen him play an acoustic show. Okay. So we met very briefly, but the first time of actually hanging out with him, he had the drummer and the guitar player, and he already were in the room, and we're already kind of rehearsing the set, and they didn't have a bass player. So I showed up, and while they were in the middle of a song, I walked into kind of the room that was adjacent, and I didn't want to interrupt, so I just let him play the song, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. Just hearing it, you're going to hear how you can get in. And then right away, I kind of immediately understood his sense of songwriting and the sense of rootsiness. And there were probably 3 or 4 covers and maybe some other originals, but a majority of what we played that night evolved into the first record that was the Jennings album. And the songs just kind of immediately made sense to me. I liked them. And the second we started playing, I just locked in right away with the drummer. And I had already gigged with the guitar player. And it just felt natural. And wonderful, really, right away. And actually, another cool thing about the early days of Shooter is that he wanted to, put together this country roots music album, and then get signed in Nashville and kind of have the next phase of the career blossom. So he had the idea of like, okay, well, we'll find a good-looking guy who sings great harmony and plays acoustic guitar. Maybe we'll find a pedal steel player. And he had envisioned this larger country band. And after maybe 2 or 3 rehearsals, we all went out to have a drink at a place around the corner, and it was like, funky little bar in the middle of Hollywood. And I said, Shooter, I think, and he was talking about having other people come by next week. I was like, I think it's cooler if it's just the 4 of us, because then we're like the Led Zeppelin of country music, because everybody in this band has a ton of personality and a lot to say musically. And if we don't add 3 more musicians, then you don't have everyone playing safe. You have each guy's personality comes through, and we sound more unique. And I was like, and that's, at least from where I'm sitting, that's what you want.
So can I ask you to play us a song, Ted? What you got for us?
Sure, I'd love to. Here is the Dobro.
Yeah.
So this is a song from the new record, Down in the Den. Or actually, I should ask, do you want a fun one or a moody one?
Let's have a moody one.
Okay, great. Okay. This one's called Hold On. Okay. And I realized a lot of my music is kind of has a hopeful undertone. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of what I sing about is, times are hard, but hold on and hang in there. And so this one is literally called Hold On. When your feelings start to fade and you're tired and lost your way, and running like the river to the sea, when your love has come and gone and you're barely hanging on, hold on to me. been looking for a friend, love loyal to the end, who might even know you better than me. Be the one to hold you and let you know. Hold on, hold on to me. Hold on, no, 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 no. Hold on to me. Let go of all your lovers. Let go and let them be. And hold on to me.
Thank you so much, Ted. That's a song for the times, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you for your time, my friend. And I hope we can meet up again when all this madness is over.
My pleasure, and I would love it. Yeah, thank you so much for staying in touch. It's an honor to be part of the show and be a guest. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much to Ted Russell Kamp there for chatting with Kev Moore. Ted's album, released last year, is called Down in the Den. Do check out his website, tedrussellkamp.com. That's 2 S's, 2 L's, Kamp with a K, and social media for the latest news. Thanks again, Ted. Hopefully you'll be able to make it back over here soon. On the scene this week, we welcome Ian Smith, who started off life as a rock, rhythm and blues drummer, but got tired of having to carry all the gear around, so moved into more folk and rootsy sort of music, took up the diatonic accordion, gradually got into recording and producing, live sound engineering, had other jobs as well, but always was playing music. Became a promoter, ran music festivals, was the national chair for one of the musicians' union sections in the UK for 8 years. Ian started an agency 20 years ago, Frusion, working in the folk and roots scenes, mostly in Europe, but sometimes further afield too. Then in 2020, his latest undertaking. Well, I'm going to hand over to Ian at this point, who is about 6 minutes into his 2-minute elevator pitch of tell us a bit about you. So here is Ian in conversation with Steve Bonham, recorded earlier in January 2021. And Ian is picking up his potted history from February 2020.
In February of last year, when the UK finally exited the European Union, which on a personal level I think is the biggest mistake in the universe, but I'll leave that as it is. I decided to start an apolitical website and information service, and it's called UK Europe Arts Work Info. And it was a way of trying to make sure that everybody in the arts, musicians, dancers, actors, filmmakers, and all the support staff. So the idea was, I was so hacked off with the fact that it was going to be much more difficult to work in Europe, and because I work with a lot of European artists into the UK, everyone's, oh, it'll be fine, it's Project Fear, it'll be fine. Of course, we're now here and it's not fine. No. So the UK Europe Arts Work Info service, which is totally free to use, fact-checked, clear information on what you can and cannot do easily to work in both directions. So that's taken me quite, well, thankfully, I've had a little bit of time this last year. But I've got a really good team with me as well. There's my old mate, Mark Ringwood, which many people will know in the UK from his work on various festivals and Marco Polo agency back in the day. Roger Patterson, who's a carnet specialist. And then just on board recently is Simon Glynn, who was a promoter for many years, and he's also the ex-CEO of Liverpool Philharmonic, the venue, and also Buxton Opera House. So the four of us together are just trying to create this clear service. We may get some funding, we're not sure at the moment, just to keep it rolling, because it does take quite a lot of time.
Yeah.
And once we actually start working again, then we've got to find some way of funding the time. But at the moment, that's what I've been doing. Oh, and also, as you know, I've been sitting on a balcony occasionally in Vienna, sometimes in the UK, because I'm dual based, playing diatonic accordion and bagpipes. In fact, what I did on the first lockdown, and I decided, because I'm a hat freak, you can't see them from here.
We have that in common too.
I own about 80 different hats, top hats, bowlers, all sorts of things. So I did a tune a hat a day, and then the first batch was 60 days, which you can check on YouTube if you're really, really bored, of either accordion, bagpipes, saxophone, bombard. I think I did one of those because it annoyed the neighbours too much. Electric guitar, very, very badly.
I first came across the you through the information exchange. It's a brilliant idea, and one of the big things that we, with the Transatlantic Connection and with long roads and the stuff that we're doing, we just believe we've all got to build a support system. In fact, Chris, who presents the show, says he calls it, we need a new ecosystem, because the big guys are just not interested in the sorts of things we're doing, and it actually doesn't work in our favor at any time. So it sounds like you've thrived over the years. So what's it taken personally to flourish in this bizarre business?
Being adaptable, really. I know it's an old trope, but it's totally true. I mean, the thing is about the creative arts industry, we are all of a similar disposition. Not everybody's the same, of course, but in order to thrive, you've got to be adaptable. You've got to move with the times, and you've got to see where it goes. And I got really tired of resistance, not only from the business community, but also to an extent from the musicians. Working in folk music and world music, sometimes there was, not now so much, but there was a resistance to new technologies, social media, ways in which we can take music out there. That is more or less long gone now. So that adaptability was what's important. And I'm a total music and arts freak, and a film freak as well. So if I see something new that I think might work well, and I like the music, I like the vibe, then I don't care how crazy it is, I'll give it a go. I'll give you an example. Right. 4 or 5 years ago, I got an email from a band from the Ukraine, from Romania, called Transylvania. And I thought, this looks interesting. And I turned it on, and I saw some of the best video I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
But what they were doing, they were combining traditional Romanian and Ukrainian folk forms with hardcore electronic dance music.
Right.
The two main guys, all dressed in sort of costume, the two main guys who were brothers, one, they had a backstory, and the backstory was that the main guy, Constantine, at the back, who did loops and things, he was the reincarnation of Baron Frankenstein. Bear with me. And then his brother, Vlad, was the reincarnation of Dracula.
I'm hanging in there.
So there's the reincarnation of Dracula, the reincarnation of Baron Frankenstein, playing traditional Romanian, Ukrainian folk music with electronic dance music. I mean, anyone else had just run a mile, but I thought it was brilliant. So anyway, I dropped that into the mix. We did quite a few gigs with them. And what my raison d'etre is taking music and performance that people think they will not like because it's labelled as folk music or jazz music or rock music or EDM or whatever, trying to strip those labels away and then present it, and usually it's successful. The problem is, of course, convincing sometimes the promoters to take a risk.
Yeah.
And really importantly, selling appropriate things to the correct people.
There's a tension, isn't it, in music, in creativity, between being able to communicate very quickly who you are, because you need to do that because people are making these decisions, and then remaining true to yourself and exploring things. I don't know any musician, I can't think of any musicians who only like to do one thing.
The only barriers that we ever find are those in ourselves, really, creatively. And if you can go beyond that, the resistance I was talking about, because I came through sort of rhythm and blues from the blues band and Fleetwood Mac, the old Fleetwood Mac, the new Fleetwood Mac, all the way through into a sort of the folk scene in around 1978, 79. And then got to know a lot of the sort of trad players, Carthy Waterson. I know Eliza very well, she's an old friend, and all of the players from that time. And generally, people were very open-minded. Like Eliza's played on lots of different things, but there was this hardcore. It's like when people started moaning about Bob Dylan playing an electric guitar. Yeah, you know, there's that hardcore of we don't like change. I think talking about Brexit again. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go there. Yeah. This imagined past that never really existed. It was this idyllic idea of what was there. So I think it's important just to, and also to look for new collaborations where possible. One of the things I often do, if I think there's somebody on the roster that I have, or even outside the roster that I come across, and I think they could work collaboratively with somebody that's really strange, doesn't necessarily go together in their head, I'll introduce them, and you know, who knows? And most people are much more open these days, I think.
I mean, where do you think we're going?
I think what's happened with COVID, and certainly the greater usage of things like Zoom, the push, the pressure, because creatives cannot help but create. They can't stop. So what I think is going to happen is that the pressure of people not being able to create live and not being able to rehearse easily with other people has pushed them into doing things over Zoom. So in a weird sense, it's actually created a new subculture, or not subculture, an ecosystem where people feel now they can more easily reach out and do some collaborations. The internet's not quite fast enough unless you've got a really good connection and a very good computer to be able to work. You know, there's too much of a timeline. So the idea of actually creating online concerts live from other locations, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Not yet, anyway. Eventually, yeah, sure, why not? But I think what's going to happen, because of the time scale of where COVID is at the moment and live, is that we've got until March, April time until vaccine rolls out across the world, not just the UK. And then gradually things will open up over the spring and summer, and there'll be a sort of semi-return to normal over that period, which means that a lot of the concerts that were rescheduled will happen, some won't, and then there'll be changes. So live will slowly start to come back. That will feed off the online internet culture that's grown out of COVID. And there'll be a hybrid as well, what I must say. It's really interesting from a promoter's point of view, because people are now used to being able to watch things on their computer. They don't like it because they don't have any other option, but people are getting used to it. So what's going to happen potentially, I think, and certainly what I'm hearing, is that promoters are going to put gigs on. And more it will be it will be available online as well for people who cannot be there. And there'll be a subscription model of some sort, or an online pay-per-view model, so people can actually be there. But with the advances in technology, all these things, so I've got about 3 phones around me, you can actually interact with the other audience members in ways we would never been able to do before. You've got audience members at the gig with mobile phones. You've got people at home on tablets, smart TVs or computers. They're all going to be able to interact in different ways. Plus, those audience members are going to be able to buy merchandise from the bank online whilst they're watching, if they want to. So it's potentially going to explode. So I think the end of this year, into 2022 is the real year where it's really going to kick off. I think I see a future for live entertainment. I'm not just talking about music as well. That's my main art form. I mean, with dance and theatre, it's going to go online, a mixed hybrid of online and live.
It's been an absolute delight talking to you, pal. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
This week from our house band, The Long Road, we're going to take a look at our latest single release. This song came out a couple of weeks ago and it's called Western Requiem. This song marks the beginning of the end, or indeed the end of the end, for our American Wilderness Odyssey project. We've been releasing 15 songs over the last 15 months, spread over 4 separate EPs. Western Requiem is the lead single from the last EP. That EP is called Looking for Gold. In a couple of weeks, Looking for Gold is released with the final 3 songs, which, when you take all 4 EPs together, all 15 songs from American Wilderness, you get an album. 15 songs over 15 months, quite the remarkable journey for us as individuals, for us as a band, and quite unintentionally, the world, it seems. Alongside the 15-song album, we are producing a companion book, American Wilderness Odyssey, The Companion, which features in-depth looks at how some of the songs came to be, the stories, the adventures, the characters we've met along the way, our own experiences that inspired the songs. Find out some more about each of the long road on each of our profile pages. The Companion is available to pre-order right now. Head to thevagabondway.net/AWO, AWO. There are some bundle offers there as well, but the Companion itself is just £10. And once it's released at the end of January, it will give you a download code for a free download of the album as well. So just £10 get you the book and the album. Anyway, Western Requiem was the last song we wrote and the last song we recorded in this American Wilderness Odyssey. Steve Bonham wrote Western Requiem, and this is what he says about it. Western Requiem remembers the legend of the Old West as portrayed in old movies, a place of instantly recognisable heroes and villains, rough-hewn characters and landscapes, of rare certainties and the inevitability that good will win out. It's elegiac and haunting, featuring some beautiful piano from, well, me, the Bish, and some fine guitar from Kev Moore. Exploring the archetypal, the bandit queen, the man in black, Geronimo, ghost dancers, with a chorus that's an almost hymn to freedom. The song fades into a never-ending sunset of memory and affirmation. The music video for this has just come out as well, shot and edited by Kat Hodkinson and Gemma Caldwell during our sessions at Woodworm Studio. This is Western Requiem.
Buffalo has gone, medicine man has come undone. The bomb summer touches down, and the trail is westward bound. Geronimo has quit the show. John Wayne never made the Alamo. Ghost dancers dance in vain. Fires go out in summer rain. Rosalie, oh Rosalie, would you dance with me all night long at the desert's edge beneath the Joshua tree? Would you sing a song for me about the time the freedom call? You'd walk along with me about the time the freedom called. You'd walk along with me. Man in black kneels down to pray. Bandit queen has run away. shooting up the old saloon. My dog's barking at the moon. Don't bleach out the Kodachrome, where the ghosts of the Mustang roam. Farewell to the last of them. This is my Western Requiem. Rosalie, oh Rosalie, would you dance with me all night long at the desert's edge, beneath the Joshua tree? Rosalie, oh Rosalie, would you sing a song for me about the time the freedom called? Walk along with me. About the time the freedom called, and you'd walk along with me.
That's it for this episode of the Transatlantic Connection Show. Thank you for watching wherever in the world you are. Remember, please subscribe to the channel, like this video if you liked it, and share it with a pal who you think might like it too. The next episode will be out on Tuesday, the 2nd of February 2021. If you enjoyed this show, you might enjoy our podcast too. It's called The Vagabond Way Podcast and is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. Just search for The Vagabond Way Podcast and you will find us. Don't forget, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/thevagabondway. Big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Stuart Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you for your ongoing support. Patreon is a great platform that makes it super easy for anyone out there, you, to support content that you love on a monthly basis. It gives you direct access to the people creating the stuff you love, us, hopefully, and you get to play an integral part in shaping the direction of things that we make. So become a vagabonder. That's our name for our supporters on Patreon to help us create music, live performances, books and short stories, this YouTube show, our weekly podcast, and some new things we're cooking up. As a vagabonder, you can get the recordings and books we make for free, receive exclusive Patreon-only merchandise in the post, get regular behind-the-scenes updates from us, unlock access to exclusive live stream performances and Q&As, and lots more. You can help us create something different, something that entertains, and something that inspires others. So, join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/thevagabondway. So until next time, keep making those transatlantic connections. Bye for now.